Our discussion today revolves around contracts for those in a partnership or co-owners in an entity to ensure that business can continue after the death of a partner. JP Villion is the V in KVN Attorneys and is also a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization. He holds a BA Law and LLB and is currently busy with his LLM while at the University of the Witwatersrand. In his spare time, he takes care of his health, family, and preferably outdoors when possible. JP, welcome back.
Thank you for having me again. Thank you.
Now, JP, just for us to start off, should the running of a business ensure that there's a contract between the partners with relation to the death of any one of them?
Absolutely. Without a question of doubt. The idea behind a business is that so much time and effort has gone into building it up that one needs to be responsible enough to deal with all eventualities which may occur. And one of the obvious eventualities is the death or disablement of a partner, because it all constitutes the same trigger event. And ideally, that agreement should set out very clearly what occurs in that event to avoid the uncertainty and the disputes and the harm which may occur to the business.
Now, in the event of a death and there are preemptive rights or I don't know what the clause is, and maybe you can highlight that, where if you die, you offer your shares to your partner.
So it's very well established from a contractual perspective that what you should have, you have voluntary exit clauses and involuntary exit clauses in a partnership agreement. Both have their place, both have their value. What we are talking about is a forced exit by virtue of a trigger event, which is death, disability, or you're bringing the repute of the company into disrepute. But in the event of death, the contract should say, this is the method of evaluation, because there's a number of methods of evaluation, as we know, and one needs to be established and pre-agreed in the agreement. Secondly, the person who performs the evaluation should be pre-nominated. Alternatively,
is that like an NPV or discounted cash flow, or what are some of those?
That's
methods?
right. So it's NPV, it's discounted cash flow, it's NAV, it's forward earnings, it's PE. There are so many
or
ways.
Combination thereof.
If you're the buyer, you'll select one or two or three of those. If you're the seller, you'll obviously advantage yourself by selecting one of the more advantageous ones to you as the seller.
So
the idea to avoid
is it a good idea to find the mean between maybe three types of valuation?
Alon, you'll find that each partnership establishes its own method of valuation, because there may be punitive clauses in it. You may, some partners say, well, I need you for 5 years. If you are not able to give me 5 years, you're only able to give me 3, well then sorry for you, yes, we'll take an evaluation of the mean, but then there's a discount to value as a penalty clause. So this is as wide open as you can imagine, and it is totally up to the partners to be responsible enough to get together and to decide and agree on a method of evaluation, who performs the valuation, who pays for the performance of the valuation, and most importantly, the terms of how that valuation is paid out to the heirs of the deceased partner.
Well, let's go back to death now and the insurance around that, because one assumes that you have to buy out the shareholding of the deceased party. There's insurance for that. And how do you make sure that the insurance is kept up to date with the value of the business?
The first step in that answer is to establish that you do need the partnership insurance. If your business is not of a value and it's in its very early beginning stages, would you want to incur the premium on a policy for partnership insurance? It's a question the partners will have to manage via a cash flow discussion. If, however, the partnership is really displaying a meaningful growth and it's profitable and it's acquiring assets and goodwill and it now has a substantive value, the idea is to, commensurate with the production of the end-of-year financial statements, is to meet with the broker, establish a value in terms of evaluation clause that's pre-captured, pre-agreed in your partnership agreement. Once that value is established, you can split it in percentage or pro rata percentage amongst the partners, and you take out life policies on each other. What will then happen, let's assume there's a 20% partner who then dies, the policy will pay out to the remaining partners the equivalent of 20% of the value of the business, Those partners will pay to the beneficiary of the deceased 20% partner. The beneficiaries will have the money, and the partners will have the 20% share. This is a crucial learning point for businesses that are starting to get a footing and grow. Because the last thing you want is for the 20% partner to die, and in his will he leaves his shares to somebody who has no knowledge of the business, has no interest in being in the business, and it could be a very destructive argument if the partnership agreement didn't cater for that event accurately. So on the one hand is to cater for it in writing in the agreement. On the other hand is to make provision via means of a policy for the payment and the satisfaction of that contractually agreed valuation.
Okay, so let's just talk about, this is a show about small businesses, right? So this is not huge, this is not corporates, aimed at corporates. The average viewer today is an entrepreneur, either small, medium, or micro business. The idea of an exiting partner remaining with shareholding, in your view, based on the size of businesses that we are dealing with, is it wise that the exiting partner remains with the shareholding or is forced to sell?
So you're not talking about death any longer?
I'm not talking about death. I'm talking about an exit. I want to leave the partnership, but I want to keep my shares. I'm going to do something else.
So legally speaking, absolutely entitled to do that. You're entitled to, you must make a distinction in your mind between management, ownership, and employment. If you're employed, you're simply an employee. You may also hold a second hat, which you may be an owner, in which case you're a shareholder, and you may have a third hat, which means you're a manager, in which case you're a director. Now, a lot of partnership agreements make provision for those three to exist simultaneously or not at all. So if you relinquish your employment, well, thank you, you become a forced seller, an involuntary seller of your shares at a pre-agreed valuation method, and one hopes once again that there's cash flow or a policy to support that payment, and you need to resign as director. Alternatively, if you resign as director, you need to resign as an employee, you need to relinquish your shareholding. So if your agreement is set up correctly, those three positions are held simultaneously or not at all. Otherwise, you end up with a position of a non-contributing shareholder who doesn't assume or absorb his division of the work. It's the Chihuahua principle. The Chihuahua bites into your ankle and it chews and chews and chews, it drags you down, but there's no value. So a non-contributing shareholder who's simply picking up dividends and taking pot shots at the management is ordinarily not a good idea.
Yeah. So let me just put it succinctly. So your view is that it's better to, in a small business, it's to have an exiting partner exit completely.
My view, after just over 2 decades of practice, is that the exiting partner needs to sell. Because there needs to be skin in the game, there needs to be my name on the table. The minute you become the Chihuahua and you can bite into the ankle of the remaining shareholders, you become a nuisance without a benefit of your services, your input. So I agree with you absolutely.
Now, JP, just our very last question. What's the most important thing that you would advise people to include in their contracts? And also just a bit of advice on people who don't even have contracts if one partner passes away.
If there isn't a contract at all, you're entering an area of dispute which can do serious harm to the business. So a partnership agreement is really a valuable and crucial tool. If you're responsible enough to start the business, to manage your cash flow, to open bank accounts, pay your taxes, do everything else properly, naturally, one of those things are to prepare a partnership agreement. And that partnership agreement should have fundamentals. In law, they call it essentialia. The essential terms of a partnership contract would, for instance, be the financial contributions of the respective partners, the manner in which the work is going to be divided, is there going to be preemptive rights, are there going to be a managing partner, is there going to be directors, how does the votes occur, who sits on the board, how do shareholders voting occur, How do you buy each other out? The formulas with which to buy each other out. Who performs the formula? How does that payout occur? The main objective of the business, dispute resolution, and obviously what we were talking about today, which was the termination of a shareholding by virtue of passing away. So these are all very essential terms, and the beauty of law is that it's totally up to the authorship of the partners what they would like to include. And today the Companies Act is even more allowing, and you can really construct something that suits your specific business and your specific partnership.
JP, thank you so much for joining us. That was JP Villion giving us very insightful information on how to handle all these things that need to occur after you have passed away within a partnership. Now it's time for the MTN Business Quick Tip of the Week.
There's a huge difference between problem and a challenge, and it's really just in one's perception. People can either perceive it as a problem, and I think about it, the moment you perceive it as a problem, there's some burden, there's some heaviness about it, there's this bad feeling about it, where in my model of the world, it's only a challenge. Why we call it a challenge is because we fully realize that when we have a challenge, it's simply an opportunity for us to grow. Opportunity for us to learn something. In order to overcome it, you've got to learn something. So if I get to experience challenges in life, I think that's a life interesting living, rather than, imagine a life with no problems. You would be bored. So the idea is that if you have a challenge, it's an opportunity for you to grow, to expand mentally, physically, emotionally, intellectually, in any direction possible. It's how we grow. And I think that's very rewarding for us.
If you'd like to see the show again, log on to www.businessdaytv.co.za, click on shows and then scroll down to the Big Small Business Show. On this site, you'll also find the entry form to apply for a Raise Corp bursary to the value of 250,000 rands. Now, Alon, today's show had a very, very strong hold on partnerships. What's your take on it?
Yeah, that was definitely my theme. I mean, JP, we spoke about partnerships, and particularly what happens with the death of a partner. Then we had two sisters. We had Tony and Ricky Gaddy, who used to play tennis together and now in business together. And then Adrian, also from Engineer, spoke about his partner was his brother as well. And maybe there's something there in the family thing, but partnerships are very, very strong. And I want to talk about partnerships. I think partnerships are a very important part of small business. If you look at venture capitalists and angel funders, they prefer to invest in either partnerships or big teams, strong teams, versus the lone wolf. And very often entrepreneurs want to own everything, and it's all about me, me, me. But the theory shows, or the research shows, that the successful entrepreneurs are generally in partnerships and not one-man bands. And why is this? It's because it's a lonely road, and to be able to share with each other your thoughts, to be able to be in a partnership where you can share each other's weaknesses, each other's strengths, and when I'm weak, you're strong. When you're strong, I'm weak, both on an emotional level and from a skills point of view. I personally am not very good at the financials. My partner very good at the financials. I am pretty extroverted, he's pretty introverted, and we complement each other as partners. For partnerships to work, I think it's very important that you have very similar values, if not the same values, that you have a very similar, if not the same, work ethic. What's very important, I find, for particularly small business partnerships is that you have the same financial runway. In other words, I have as much cash as you, so we both feel pressurized. When one our business partner has got lots of money and the other one has very little, the tolerance for being in that partnership is different. And of course, you have to have the same vision as to where you want to take the business. And ironically, that's the one that I think most partners miss, is that one has a vision of a small business, the other has a vision of a very big business, and it starts to really split. So I'd rather talk about that stuff up front. So for me, partnerships are a very, very important part of the longevity of a small business.
Thanks, Alon. The importance of partnerships and realizing that you can find your strength in someone else and they can find their strength in you. Please do send us an email to bigsmall@bdtv.co.za if you'd like to appear on the show or give us feedback or recommendations. Till next week, it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me too. And remember, if you think it, write it down together and make it reality together.
The Big Small Business Show was proudly brought to you by MTN Business. Your success is our passion. And the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. Develop, influence, lead.